It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, talking District 1 and 2 athletics week in, week out. My name is Brandon Baney, and joining us from North Idaho, Ryan Scaggs. What's going on, Scaggs?
What's up? I don't have my my signature cup of coffee that I'm drinking this morning. So
Oh, man. You know, I've got mine, but I was a rookie and didn't fill it up before the show. So it's empty, but it's the
I drank all mine. Oh, there you go.
The Mr. Mug, and you know, I don't pay attention. Some days I'll pull out the misses and you know, whatever.
Nobody's gonna judge you.
Right. No judgments. Okay. Real quick, weather-wise, what's going on up there? We've actually been able to get a lot of competitions in North Idaho.
We have this bright thing in the sky out today called the sun. It's something that we haven't really seen for like the last few days, so that's been really nice. No, I mean, I say that jokingly, but yesterday afternoon was pretty decent, but today the weather's been awesome this morning. So hopefully it sticks around. We get more stuff in, but yeah, I mean, we've been 2 days without snow. So that we're good.
On the flip side of this, now, if you're watching the video version of this podcast on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, first of all, you should like it and subscribe. Hit the little bell icon, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That'll let you know every time a new episode is published and ready to go. You can also listen to this audio only at IdahoSports.com and wherever you download your podcasts. If you're watching the video, though, it's going to be show and tell time. I'm going to share a picture. So you said 2 days without snow up north where I live, still in East Idaho, and specifically Pocatello and southward. It has been snowing for like the last 2 days, non-stop. I'm not joking, we probably had about 18 inches of snow, like by the time it was all finished yesterday. Here's me shoveling yesterday. I was outside like all day yesterday. Take a look at this picture.
Holy cow. What in the That's April. That's no, we haven't had that. I mean, it was snowing on 4th of July pass. If you had to drive from Coeur d'Alene to the Silver Valley yesterday, the freeway was closed with accidents and stuff. But yeah, we don't have that. Thank God. Yeah, that was like 3 years ago for us, but we avoided that this year. So we had our last snow that I had to move off the ground. I think like the actual accumulation was like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, no, we're good now. So my yard is now bare, and I finally got my fall leaves off of the yard. So
well, as you can see from the picture, this is the backyard at Casa de Baney. It might be a while before all that snow melts.
Holy smokes, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, that black thing in the middle there that all the snow is piled up on, that's our we have a little outdoor fire pit.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like a fire pit.
I thought it was safe to break it out, but evidently not.
Whoopsies.
So anyways, it's buried under about 18 inches of snow. And so, yeah, that's what's going on here in East Idaho. But as we mentioned, in North Idaho, a lot of action taking place finally. And this week in particular, we've already had some really exciting contests. Let's start in baseball, where they're non-conference opponents, but they're big rivals. Is Lakeland and Timberlake, is that the biggest rivalry for each of those schools? They're in the same school district, Ryan.
I would say Lakeland at Sandpoint's a bigger rivalry. But I mean, it's big. It's, they're obviously their classification. I think Lakeland is a bigger rival for Timberlake than Timberlake is for Lakeland. I'll put it that way. But geographically, I mean, gosh, they're 11 miles apart. They're in the same school district. So it's still a pretty big deal because there's bragging rights there. I mean, some of those kids did go to the same elementary school if they went to like Twin Lakes Elementary or Garwood, depending on which side of, respective roads they lived on, depends on where they go to high school. So there's some of those kids out there, but yeah, no, that was a crazy game. I mean, like we can break into the ins and outs of that game, but I mean, it was a back and forth. Well, it was kind of a stalemate for a long time, and then Timberlake was able to blow things open on an error.
Yes. So Monday night in Rathdrum, Lakeland is hosting Timberlake in a non-conference battle, 7-inning affair. Well, it went extra innings. It went to the 8th inning, and Timberlake wins by the final of 5-2. And just on the surface, you'll look at that and go, oh, okay. Yeah, it looks like a good win for the Tigers, easy win. But the context, this was actually a very close game that swung on, as you said, an error in that fateful top of the 8th inning for Lakeland.
Yeah. And I mean, a really good pitcher's game too. I mean, I think it was knotted 2-2 going into the extra frames before Timberlake was able to score the decisive runs, and it happened on a collision. There was a short pop-up in front of the dugout on the first baseline, and I believe it was the pitcher and catcher collided. Um, one of them made the catch, obviously, but the Timberlake runner at third base, he was able actually to reach third on a sacrifice and then a single. He got to third base, and then he tagged up on the pop fly and was able to run home, and nobody covered home plate because 3 players were all rushing for the pop fly between the first baseman, pitcher, and catcher. So, just a little bit of an error there, and obviously the collision with the players, and then Timberlake was able to add a couple insurance runs to come away with the win.
Yeah, so a wild win there, and now these two teams will go their separate ways. But we like Timberlake. You have been higher on Timberlake than I have in baseball this year. I'm still kind of like, well, Bonners Ferry won it last year.
Oh, Bonners
They're
is
still
good too. Yeah,
right. But I think Timberlake really has closed that gap, and it's going to be fascinating to see those two slug it out for that one spot to state.
yeah, and we talked about pitching at the high school level. You get a couple solid. If you can get a 1-2, that helps you in back-to-back games and double headers. That can sneak those extra frames away. But for Timberlake, it's been playing small ball. That's where they've been getting their wins. They've been able to play small ball really well. Getting good base running and low errors or at least in the fielding aspect of it. But I mean, smart base running has been just their MO so far this year, and it's really helped them out. So it'll be an exciting run, I think, towards the end of the season in that 3A race up north.
Yeah, and we should mention for Lakeland, the two players who collided and took each other out on that error. Both are kind of dealing with injuries from that. You had Blaze Day, and you also had Rowan Riley, and they both collided, and so we hope they're both okay and they're able to come back. It sounded like the Coeur d'Alene Press talked to Lakeland head coach Jason Bradbury, and concussion symptoms possibly for both guys, which is scary. So
yeah, I guess it was a pretty scary incident. So we're thinking both those kids and hoping they come back healthy and able to make that stretch down. After we're out of spring break up here now, so they're kind of on that stretch run there. It's just a marathon going into the state weekend. So districts and state, I should say. So there's a lot at stake for that Lakeland team, and what kind of tends to be a bit short roster too. They're going to need those kids back, but they need them back healthy. So we just hope they return soon and they're able to come back at full strength.
Certainly. And then, you look at the overall standings for that 4A Inland Empire Conference or Inland Empire League, and boy, Moscow's 3-6, Sandpoint's 2-5, Lakeland's still looking for that first win at 0-5, and you go, boy, this league stinks. Nobody's any good. But you got to remember that they're playing all the 5A schools, and for Moscow and Sandpoint, they went down to that spring break tournament in Boise and played a lot of bigger schools, and so you can't look at just the records.
No, and I'm scrolling through right now, kind of looking at the schedule too, and they entered that part of the schedule where when they play the 5A teams, it's counting against them. So there's, I don't want to say that record's inflated, but as far as on the loss column, but yeah, it's not an easy schedule to be a 4A team in North Idaho. Let's just put it that way. There's not a lot of 3A schools to go play in your non-conference schedule. So you're trying to fill it with those 5A teams, and that gets to be a bit of a struggle. Let's put they're battle tested as they come down the stretch, but it's a struggle for sure.
Yeah. So again, we've talked about we like Sandpoint kind of as the lead there, but can Moscow challenge? I mean, it's a young Moscow is kind of going through a really young movement in their boys athletic programs, right? Their football team was very young. Basketball was a mix. But Moscow's young, but can they challenge?
I think they can. Absolutely. I mean, I've got a relative on that Moscow team, Wyatt Hardig. who's actually a very key player on that team. And, he plays the corner at third base, or he'll play catcher. He'll play in the outfield. He'll even pitch. But there's other kids on that team, like Isaacson is another kid to keep your eye on that. They've got some pitching. They're young. And I think with youth, you get performances you didn't expect as far as the high ceiling, but also you get the parts where you're lacking the experience part of things too at times, and they can get their cage rattled a little bit. I think if they get their feet under him and as the season goes, and if they can keep from that kind of demoralized, approach of if they're taking a couple lumps from Lewiston or Coeur d'Alene, and find the wins and avoid those slumps, I think Moscow can definitely challenge for the IEL title. Absolutely.
And Lakeland as well, at 0-5, still looking for that first win of the year, but they also, you get to that 3-team district and really anything could happen. That's for sure. So we'll keep an eye on that 3-team race as it goes. Let's dip down to 2A, the Central Idaho League in baseball, where last night you had a big conference game. Kellogg was at St. Mary's. St. Mary's started hot. And remember, St. Mary's got to state last year at the 2A. They were sub 500 all year, kind of got hot right at districts, and Orofino and St. Mary's both advanced to state. St. Mary's won a play-in game last year. I believe it was over New Plymouth. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, St. Mary's won the play-in game. They get to state. So they're the team coming in with a little pedigree. Kellogg, we'll remember, last year was in the 3A ranks, and they missed out on their opportunity to go to state. Bonners Ferry took that district. And so coming in, St. Mary's is the team that's got a little more state experience, and they jump out to a 7-0 lead, Scaggs. And you're like, all right, Lumberjacks are here to play. But Kellogg outscores St. Mary's 12-1 the rest of the way to pick up a 12-8 win. Huge win for the Wildcats on the road.
Yeah, Kellogg, I mean, they got the bats going, and that was just something that, we kind of knew that. I think going into the season, we knew that Kellogg was going to be able to hit the ball. I think the question mark kind of was hinged upon on the mound. St. Mary's was able to feast early in that game, but as things settled down in the pitching, the bats showed up for the Wildcats and really overpowered St. Mary's. It'll be interesting to see. I think they play a twin bill on Saturday. And so they're going to play again in a doubleheader just, within, 4 days of each other. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that doubleheader game, but that CIL is going to be that's a tough league this year. I mean, I really look at it. The addition of Kellogg to that conference really changes things a little bit. And we obviously know what Orofino can do, but Kellogg's going to pose a threat. I really see that just because of the offensive explosion that you can see out of that lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be fast. And we still like Orofino too, right? As kind of the overall favorite there. Yeah.
I think the Wildcats wouldn't surprise me one bit if they get to state and they can make some noise. I think that, but I do like the Maniacs a lot. I like that roster that came back from last year's team. But Kellogg can certainly make things interesting. They've got some great athletes in that lineup.
Yep. So 3 really good teams fighting for basically 2 spots to state. I haven't looked too closely at the state baseball seedings, but I assume it's going to follow every other sport that we've had this year. And by the way, interesting talk about, Max Prep's seeding and stuff. As we're recording this on Wednesday, April 5th, the IHSAA is having their April meeting, and a lot of interesting discussions there. And we might have some stuff to talk about next week with that. But
something that we skipped over, sorry, at the 5A, going back to that real quick, something that we skipped over was Lake City shutting out or like blanking Lewiston on a sweep. Like, that was something that we didn't really see. I mean, a really good Bengal team in Lake City showing up, and they, win 8-5, 8-3 at Lewiston. That was a couple weeks ago, obviously, but like this T-Wolf team could challenge. I mean, they got a big win over Mountain View. They play Moscow this weekend in a doubleheader. So, I mean, keep your eye on Lake City. That I know that they've got the first-year coach, but he's been a long-time member of that coaching staff. But now that Paul Manzardo stepped down, but Lake City could make some noise. I really look at that T-Wolf team is quietly, threatening with defense and, a little bit of offense there against the Bengals in that set. But it should be interesting to see. So sorry to kind of interrupt there and take us off track, but it was something in 5A that I think we missed.
Yes, for sure. No, that was a good reminder. Definitely. Okay, so let's talk softball, and let's keep it at 5A in the Inland Empire League, where you had Lake City and Post Falls meet up for a double dip yesterday. Now, when we talk about this league, we kind of think of Coeur d'Alene and maybe Lewiston, and then Post Falls. And, Lake City's a team that's got work to do, but they earned a split with Post Falls yesterday. I thought that was a really encouraging sign for this Lake City program that's continuing to build and evolve. And it was kind of an interesting deal where the first game, these are, in the regular season, it's even in state, it's 7-inning games, right? It's not like the big leagues where it's 9. It's 7-inning games. Well, the first game went the full 9 innings because it went to extras, and they needed extra innings to sort things out. In the first game, it was Post Falls that got the win 7-5. But because the first game took so long, Ryan, they ran out of daylight in the second game, and it had to be called after 5 innings due to darkness. And Lake City was leading 4-1 at the time. So Lake City gets the win in the second game. They played 14 innings. It was just kind of a non-traditional 14 innings.
Yeah. No, and that was, a great twin. I think both teams got some encouraging signs out of each individual game. I think, Lake City, looking at what they were able to get offensively, was probably a really bright spot for that lineup that, there's been some question marks coming into the season. How can they respond offensively? And then pitching was the one that I think really showed up for both teams, that they were able to get, really strong outings from their pitchers. Both teams did. So, I think going into things, there's a lot of bright spots to look at in those games, but overall, like, how is it going to, I look forward to the rest of the season, because I look at this IEL being secretively more competitive, I think, than what we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year. I think we talked a lot about Coeur d'Alene. We talked about what Lewiston's bringing back, but this thing could come down to the final 2 weeks of the regular season to decide how that seeding's going to shake out for the district tournament. So it'll be interesting to see how things shake at 5A. I mean, I like the competitive balance in this conference this year for softball.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun to watch. I still kind of give Coeur d'Alene the nod, I think, and Lewiston right behind them. But yeah, if you all of a sudden add Lake City into the mix and you've got a 4-team juggernaut, it's going to be really fun to watch these teams duke it out.
Look at the overall records. Lake City's what, 4 and sorry, am I looking at if I'm looking at softball correctly, Lake City's at 4-2.
Yes, that's correct.
Moscow, yeah. We'll talk about Moscow in a second, but Coeur d'Alene's 2-1. They've had a lot of postponements. Lewiston right now is 1-5. Like, that one, they haven't played any conference games, obviously, but 1-5 to start the year isn't the start that we expected to see out of that Bengal team. So Post Falls sitting right now on the top of the heap in the conference at 2-4, but they're 2-2 in league. So, it's kind of anybody's. We haven't really seen Coeur d'Alene play much, so I think that's the question mark, is where the Vikings come out firing and play some of those, games that may have been postponed, but make those up. Could be really interesting.
Yeah, and you talked about Moscow and Lewiston. We're going to hook up yesterday. Let's talk about the Moscow Bears, because they're very quietly assembling a pretty strong team.
Yeah, they are 7-1 on the year so far, which I think is exceeding or surpassing expectations, and not just what they were able to do, but their only loss in the year was 9-7 to Post Falls, a 5A team, that many expected. I mean, they got a win over Timberlake, who's a great 3A team, a win over Boise, a win over Meridian, a win over Columbia, 13-2. They blew out Pullman 29-0, and in that game, Megan Highfill hit for the cycle for the Bears. This Moscow team could be legit and for real. It was something that in the season, like, you look at the roster that was coming back and you're like, oh, it's going to be super competitive in the IEL at 4A. It could be just like last year. I don't know. The Bears right now, what they're showing, they could blow the doors off of everybody and they could walk away with this conference. If they keep playing at this pace, they offensively have just been a juggernaut. But I mean, also on the defensive side, I mean, they've got 2 shutouts. They've have 4 of their games have been 2 runs or less. So Moscow's been playing really, really well.
Yeah, and of course, we'll see when that doubleheader with Lewiston gets rescheduled. The nice thing is they're close to each other, right? So there's, they can play it literally whenever. It's not like
playing Tuesday. Well, they should have played Tuesday, but that obviously got replaced. I would see that they could possibly be playing that very soon. Maybe, I don't know if it's not this weekend, but probably it'll fit in next week somewhere, would be my guess based on the schedule.
Yes. All the snow that hit southeast Idaho also kind of hit up there in District 2 a little bit yesterday.
Yep.
I heard in Grangeville they got dumped on up there. So yeah, they obviously Moscow Lewiston gets postponed as did most of the District 2 action from yesterday. So that's kind of what's going on in the softball ranks. St. Mary's did beat Kellogg yesterday as well in CIL action. Tacey Watkins only 14 strikeouts.
A pedestrian 14 strikeouts.
Yeah, we're used to seeing her, 17, 18, 19. Those Kellogg hitters making her work.
Yeah, they had to earn the win with only 14 Ks.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a crazy. I mean, what she's able to accomplish, at St. Mary's. We say, regardless of classification, probably the most dominant pitcher in the state. At least in my regards, I look at her as somebody that's extremely dominant on the mound, and when she hits, when she's on, she's on. Like, I mean, she's on. I don't want to say anybody's ever unhittable, but she's as close to you as you can get in the high school ranks.
Yeah. And so we're debuting a new feature, Ryan. We just published them today because I was dealing with Snowmageddon the last 2 days. But moving forward, every Monday we will have our heavy hitters for baseball and softball, the 9 best individual hitting performances, single game performances from the week that was. So the 9 best baseball hitters, the 9 best softball hitters. And then Tuesday, we'll have what's called primetime pitchers. And this will be the 5 best pitching performances in baseball and softball. 9 hitters because there's 9 hitters in a lineup, 5 pitchers because in a Major League Baseball rotation, there's 5 pitchers. And if you want to submit a nomination for an athlete to be one of our heavy hitters or primetime pitchers, you can send me an email at Brandon@IdahoSports.com. But spoiler alert, I think Tacey Watkins is going to be on primetime pitchers a lot.
Yeah, no, she's going to find her way on that list fairly often. So, yeah, no, there's that, and then that Timberlake team too. I think you're going to see quite a few players on that lineup that are going to find their way onto that list as well.
Yeah, for sure. Not a ton of North Idaho athletes on this inaugural list, only because there wasn't that many games last week because of weather and spring break, right? But one that did make it, Megan Highfill from Moscow. She hit for the cycle in the Bears demolition of Pullman. Absolutely destroyed the Greyhounds last week.
Yep. No, that was an absolute drubbing by Moscow. And like I said, I just look at that team right now and what they're doing. That is something special is brewing down there in Moscow right now with that Bears softball team.
Yeah, pretty exciting to watch. So Monday, heavy hitters, Tuesday, primetime pitchers, and our debut lists are all on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. You can check those out now. Let's talk golf. We finally got some golf action in. We had to go all the way north to Bonners Ferry to get
the golf mecca of North Idaho, and we to Bonners Ferry.
That's where the weather was nicest. And so Timberlake and Kellogg and Bonners Ferry got together for a little try match yesterday. On the boys' side, you had the Kellogg boys win the team title pretty convincingly, and Stephen Paul of Kellogg was the individual medalist. And I think he shot par, right, Ryan?
Yeah, he shot a 72 to win that one. That was pretty impressive for an early season event to come out firing at a 72. And the conditions on the greens, and it's still kind of winter golf up here a little bit. The grass hasn't necessarily turned as lush as you would like due to weather. I mean, the sun the next couple of weeks should help with that. I think with the amount of moisture that we had this winter, the conditions are going to be phenomenal as we go down the stretch this spring. I think golf courses are going to be awesome. Conditions will change for sure, but yeah, to shoot par in an early season event, that's pretty impressive. That's a darn good showing, and I think that the Kellogg Wildcat team will take that all day long and run with that one.
Yeah, and then on the girls' side, Bonners Ferry won the team title there pretty convincingly. Braylon Bayer was your individual medalist. I think I said Aisha Abubakari was a great golfer for Bonners Ferry, and I got the double A name mixed up with the double B name. Braylon Bayer is who I was trying to think about last week when we were talking about golf, because she went to state as a freshman and did really well. And then last year took second place overall. And so now in her junior season, we're really excited to see what Braylon Bayer can do. Bonners Ferry won the 3A golf championship 2 years ago, took second last year, only by 2 strokes to Kimberly. And so to me, Bonners Ferry loaded for Bear again in 3A girls golf.
Loaded for Bear?
Pun
intended.
And there's our title.
Can't take the dad jokes out of the dad.
Loaded for Bayer. Okay. Yeah, I like that. But yeah, I mean, Bonners Ferry girls golf is going to be very fun to watch all season long. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I like it them. And I think that they're the early favorite to win the 3A title. Just based on that lineup. And, you know, as I said, as course conditions improve, I mean, we're going to see scores dropping too. We're going to see, I could relatively see realistic that, you know, they're going to be able to cut 10 strokes, you know, respectively.
Yep. So let's finish up with track and field. You know, we talked about the Sweeney invite, kind of the big season opening meet over in Lewiston. This was a couple of weeks ago, and we forgot a guy, Ryan, in our rundown of all the great accomplishments that happened.
Yeah, and the number 1 400 time in the state, Trevor Cogley from Lake City, ran a 49.4 at the Sweeney. You know, that's not even his PR yet. Like, that's not approaching PR territory for him. That's a great showing early in the season. He's the commit to Boise State, so he's going to be running track in the Mountain West Conference next year. But yeah, just a great showing for him. There's some that, like, I was kind of looking through too. He has the number 2 time in the state in the 200 as well at 22.3. That was also at the Sweeney invite. Dylan Wolf quietly out there, 22.6 for Post Falls. The junior for the Trojans. That Post Falls team, you know, they've got some speed, and that I'm going to see as the weather warms up. I'm looking at that Trojan team. We're going to see the relays especially start showing up and cutting times. But there's some pretty good efforts out there going around in track right now. At least on the boys side. Rusty Lee was a weird one. We know how great he is in the 300. He's got the number 3 time in the state in the 300 hurdles, which last year I believe he led the state most of the season in the 300 hurdles with the best time. He's got the number 1 time in the 110 this year. So something maybe he was working on in the off season. I don't know, but he's got the number 1 time in the state right now in the 110 high hurdles. And that's, you know, great showing for him, for the Bulldogs. You know, and you kind of look around a little bit. All the speed, obviously, in the 100 is pretty much down south right now. There's some crazy times. I mean, Gatlin Bear going to the Texas relays and running a 10.18. I mean, like, are you flipping kidding me? That's pre-Olympic speed. That's insane. And so, you know, and guess what? He's only a junior. I mean, come on. So there's a reason he's a 5-star wide receiver recruit, you know, for Burley. But yeah, no, there's some good times out there. I mean, Lakeland's got the number 2 4x1 time in the state at 43.4. So they're leading 4A. Post Falls has got the number 1 4x2 relay. So, you know, and then you look at the throws. I mean, discus, James White from Lewiston leads the state in the disc right now at 166.1. And he's also second in the shot put at 53.2. So the bank on the boys track side, there's some good promise there for District 1 and District 2 teams to get some medals at state.
Yeah, Gatlin Bear, he's the guy that like runs so fast that there's nobody else in the picture when the camera can't zoom out far enough to get the second place runner. It's been pretty funny to watch. So yeah.
Another one to talk about too on the girls side, Kristen Wemhoff with the number 3 400 time in the state for Prairie at 59.4. And Caden Speck's right behind her at 59.5. So pretty impressive there for 2 small school kids to be, you know, in the mix in the top 3 in the state.
Yeah, and Caden Speck, I think, is also pretty good in the hurdles as well. So she'll be an athlete to watch at Highland over there in Craigmont this year. It'll be a lot of fun to watch all of our local track and field athletes. And another new feature, we're going to debut it tomorrow, and it's going to be every Thursday, Ryan. It's basically our bracketology, which was hugely popular. You know, we did basically projecting the state tournament fields for basketball this past year and for football. And I wanted to do it for the spring as well. And I thought, well, track would be a good one to do. And basically, I'm going to go through and look at the leaderboards every week and compile the points and go, okay, based on the times, distances we've seen so far, here's how it would be scored at the state meet. And then I'll also list the top individual in each event.
Yeah.
I'll do it for every classification, 5A through 1A, boys and girls. It's our, I was trying to come up with a name for it. We had a meeting earlier this week. Me and Paul Kingsbury and Logan Green were the brain trust here at Idaho.
Brain trust.
And
Baney, Green, and Kingsbury et al., the attorney, the law firm.
Yeah, that's right. And I said, it's like our bracketology, but for track. I was like, what about tracketology? Right?
I like it. That's awesome.
But then, Paul came through and said, we got to include the field events too, though, right? It's not just the track, it's the field. So I was like, all right. So like on the spot, the only good idea I've ever had in my life, I came up with tracking the field.
There you go.
Yeah, that way you get both. There, so.
And it's another field event that I forgot was on the boys' side too. Trenton McLean, sophomore for Post Falls, has been tied for the number 1 jump in the state at 6'4" in the high jump. So there's some good track, there's some good field, there's all the above going on up here. So
yes,
I like the focus every week and getting some more notoriety for these athletes, because there's some great stuff going on up north.
And I'll tell you, I kind of just did it loosely as a trial run last week. How long is it going to take me to compile all the points and stuff? And Post Falls, I think, is going to do very well on the boys' side, based on the numbers I crunched, and we'll see how that changes tomorrow. But yeah, I think Post Falls is going to be in the mix for. I
talked to Coach Etchison there fairly often, and I know that he's extremely high on his team this year. They got a very high ceiling, let's put it that way.
Yes. So anyways, we will keep an eye on that. Tracking the field, our track and field state projections coming every Thursday on IdahoSports.com. So basically there's going to be something new for, we're going to get the coaches polls up and going for softball and baseball. Basically, you'll just want to go to IdahoSports.com every single day, because we'll have all the scores, all the schedules.
Just bookmark it as your homepage. Problem solved.
Yes, that's how it is on mine. It's the first place I go every morning. So yeah, check it all out at IdahoSports.com. All right, Scaggs, stay warm up there. Enjoy that big blazing ball of fire in the sky. Still out there?
Yeah, it's kind of hanging out for a little while longer, at least.
All right. Well, enjoy the weather, and thanks for tuning into the North Idaho Prepcast, everybody. We'll see you back here next week. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney on IdahoSports.com.